Travel Support Thursday. Travel Thursday.
Travel on today's Travel Support Thursday. We got all sorts of what?
You got the jingle.
Travel Thursday.
Travel Thursday.
We're in
in
a
our camper van.
camper van time. Camper podcast.
Sassy Molassy. This is her name, and she is wonderful.
She is beautiful. Welcome back once again to Travel Support Thursday, the show where we answer all of your burning travel questions. So just please as a reminder, we literally answer the questions that are down in the comments on YouTube. So just leave questions that you have and we will answer them in next week's podcast. And it'll be great for everyone. Everyone will have a good time with it.
Everyone wins. Everyone learns.
It's a big win-win experience. So on today's Travel Support Thursday, we got all sorts of interesting questions. I think our big overarching topic is safety while traveling.
We're also talking about what are our go-to packs and what we usually pack when we travel.
Ooh, best backpacks.
Yeah.
Big discussion.
You have so many. How we pick places to eat, and when would we throw in the YouTube towel?
Oh, as in what would it take for us to quit YouTube?
That's right.
Ooh.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
So first, we just wanted to acknowledge all the support and the kindness that we received last week from the podcast when we talked about generally what it's like and what it feels like to travel while being an Asian American woman and putting it all on YouTube. We received a lot of thoughtful messages from all of you, and we really appreciate it. And I think the overarching message that we received is that, the world is 98% positive, and there are just some terrible people out there who just need to take a trip.
Yeah, it was awesome. There were so many great stories that we saw, and so many heartfelt stories.
Yes.
Some of them really kind of sad. But most of them, I think all of them actually had really good endings to them. All of them were there were some real jerks out there. But the thing that I think that we saw over all of them was that just everyone ended their message with hopefulness of that yep, it sucks to be out there sometimes and there are some jerks out there, but most of the time people are pretty great.
Yes.
And I got to say that's been our experience too.
Agreed. We love all your stories, all your messages, all your comments, sad and happy, challenging and uplifting, all of them. So keep them coming. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But one question that did come up, actually.
Hold on, I'm getting it.
A lot of you had asked, a couple of you had asked where my sweater or my top was from that I was wearing in last week's podcast. And, I think I bought this from Costco years and years ago. But this brand specifically is...
Looks like green tea. Is that
green tea? Huh. I don't know if they have it at Costco any longer because it's been about 5 or 6 years, but you might be able to find it on Amazon. And if I do, I will send you a link.
Yeah, just look down in the description for the link for that sweater if you are really interested in it. Costco is about the height of fashion that we have. It is probably the most fashionable place that we shop from. No, I would say, because it's either that or it's thrift stores.
Yeah, we love them.
So when we buy new clothes,
you find good finds.
Normally Costco or Sam's Club.
This is a thrift store find.
It says Oahu. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so let's get to it. Our first question comes from Brenna Norwell 305, who says, "Great series and thoughtful responses. Would love a gear haul in a future video. Ooh. What are your go-to packs? Code Epoxy versus Tortuga versus alternative brand? And what do you typically bring on a medium-length trip?"
Oh, man. Okay.
Well, our answers are going to be very different.
Okay, I don't want to monologue too hard here, but I have tried, I think, almost every backpack available.
Also, a lot of you have noticed in our videos and pointed out, Josh's backpack changes, I think, every season.
Yeah. It's an obsession of mine. I am not ashamed to say it that I am in constant search of the perfect backpack. Okay,
he has quite the collection.
So let me give you my history of this just real quick. Mm-hmm. So on my first trip around the world, this was 2011, 2012. I had no idea what I was doing. Brought this absolutely gigantic REI Flash backpack. It was 55 liters in the bag, and then another 20 liters on top in this floppy head that you could put over the top of the bag.
So and 75 liters?
Yeah, 75 liters. So if you don't know what that means, 75 liters, imagine a backpack that goes from right in between your butt and your knees. That's where the bottom of the backpack is, and it goes all the way up to just halfway up your head.
Wow.
And it's quite large. It's wider than you are. It's really big. So I brought way too much stuff on that first trip. I didn't know what I was doing.
What stuff that you had?
Oh man, so much dumb stuff. I started reading through all these packing lists for a around the world trip. I was going for a year. And these packing lists are just insane. But you only realize it like after you've traveled enough that no, you probably don't need a giant water purifier pen. You probably don't need to actually bring a tent. You're not going to use
A
that every day.
tent.
Yeah, you probably don't need a sleeping bag with you at all times. So many little things, and invariably on these packing lists, they always say like, "Oh yeah, bring this just in case." And that applies to like anything because you're going on a 1-year round the world trip, so literally anything could happen.
Just in case.
Right. So therefore, if you're packing just in case, you should probably just pack your entire house. So,
That's an idea.
There you go.
Camper van.
So after that first trip, I downsized substantially, and then the second one, I brought an Osprey Farpoint 40.
Oh, so significantly.
Much smaller. It might have been 45. Bright green, way smaller than the last one, but honestly, I still had too much room. Like I just packed extra stuff to fit in there. I didn't really need all that room at all. Because mostly what I was doing on my 1-year trip was like going from big city to big city to big city to big city and then sometime off into the countryside. But if I went on a long hiking trip, I would just like buy a tent for that one thing that I did.
Or rent it, yeah.
Rent it, yep. And then I would just donate it back or give it to the next person who's doing the same trip that I was. Trip number 3, I brought a 30-liter, what was it called? I brought a 30-liter Osprey Porter. I'm a real big fan of I was a real big fan of the Osprey backpacks, and I think I still am. They're very like hiking-y. Like when you look at those backpack types, they're like super. You just imagine someone like strapping them on and going and climbing a mountain. Not so much strapping them on and like flying to Paris. And this one in particular, bright green, and when you put it on, because it was so like short, because it was a 30-liter backpack, it stuck out so far from my back that it literally made me look like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. They have other colors, like there's like an orange one or a red one or something, and either way you just look like a different Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like there's no way that you avoid it.
Teenage Mutant Ninja. What's the song?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell.
Turtle power.
So that one with 30 liters, I think that felt just about perfect size-wise. Bringing just like a couple of changes of clothes, just my running shoes, and then a pair of flip-flops that I would just like jam in the sides of it.
Yeah.
And the way that it opened up kind of like a suitcase was a bit revolutionary at the time. This was like 2016, 2017. There weren't other backpacks that really did this yet. And that was just so convenient. You just like flop it down on the bed, pop the whole thing open, and then you had access to all of your stuff. But then on this last trip, this most recent one that we took, and I guess kind of are still taking, we found the Cotopaxi Alpa, which I think both of us love. Absolutely love. So on that trip, I brought the 35-liter version of that, which was honestly just a little bit too big.
This is the one that I still have.
Yes, yeah. And I think that out of all of the backpacks that I've tried, which have been a lot, I think the Cotopaxi Alpa is the closest to perfect that I've found so far. It does have some small annoyances, but it does, like, to be clear, we're not sponsored by any of these backpack companies, or we're not sponsored by anyone right now. So
that's okay.
Yeah. So I think it does have some downsides. I don't know. What do you like or hate about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of you who have watched our videos in the last couple of years, you'll notice that we both have this Alpa Cotopaxi 35-liter bags. Josh's is the colorful, bright one. Mine is the sleek black one that has this like waterproof outside. I love this backpack. My list of backpacks though is pretty short compared to Josh's. Before this era, I also had an Osprey teal green turtle shell backpack that was maybe 40 liters, 45 liters. It was quite large as well, but I loved the clamshell feature of it, meaning it could open up like a suitcase. And so that was what I was looking for. I hate having to with backpacks having to dig through and pull out stuff. So it's nice.
Like you just open the top and you have to shove your hand all the way to the bottom.
You don't know what you have, so you have to bring out everything to find that one dry towel. But the Cotopaxi backpack, that's my biggest love of this backpack. It opens up like a suitcase. Each compartment has a zipper and almost like a not compression strap, but just keeps everything together like a packing cube, and it fits surprisingly a lot. And I love the size of it. It's not too chunky. on either side, so it feels just right. It feels like you're carrying a suitcase, like a carry-on suitcase.
Yes.
It has a laptop sleeve. It has my backpack has an outer like waterproof shell, which is really great. The only downside I would say, and Cotopaxi, if you're out there somewhere, I would, just like to say, let's figure out a way to put like a sleeve for a water bottle, somewhere to put your water bottle, because there's no good place to hang or store your water bottle.
Yeah, at all. Like you could get a clip to put on the side, but then it'd just be like bonking against
everywhere.
your side and everybody else as you're walking around. Yeah. I think that's kind of the only big downside of it. I mean, she got the 35 liter. I just bought the 28 liter, slightly smaller, and I love that because no airlines even give that a second look, even like the mega budget airlines. That's like just the right size where it looks like, oh yeah, that could totally fit under a seat.
Yeah, you'll notice too in the last couple of trips, in the last couple of years, Josh's backpack from the Cotopaxi has changed quite a bit. Like there were a couple of times, like in our last trip to Japan, you brought just an 18 liter, that Timbuktu backpack that you had from years ago.
I wanted to see if I could get by with less, and I think that 18 liters for anything more than like a week or two, even then, it's just not enough.
Yeah,
it's just not enough.
What ends up happening?
Yeah, that's true. We brought it on the Camino, and unfortunately, because of how small the backpack was, Lisa had to carry a lot of the food. I'm sorry.
It's like it was like barely enough for like 2 t-shirts, 2 shorts, and then one slipper on the side and 1 slipper on the inside. So it was pretty tiny.
Yeah. And I think, and you asked specifically about the Tortuga backpacks, which I do also love. Those are great backpacks, but I think they have one massive flaw in that they don't acknowledge just how absolutely crazy the airlines have gotten with their weight restrictions. To be able to bring a backpack with really anything on it onto any of these flights is difficult. I mean, our flight to Australia, we could only take 7 kilos, which is just over 14 pounds. That's not a lot.
Backpacks are almost like 2 to 3 pounds already.
Yes, and the Tortuga backpacks are almost twice as much as that. They're like 5 pounds. Some of them are like 5 or 6 pounds. They're great. They're friggin' indestructible.
Sure.
They're like, and they're waterproof, and they have all these cool pockets and all these features for charging stuff. They're great, but I think they're just too heavy if you're going to be flying budget airlines.
Yeah, that was one of the more recent conversations that we've been having. Now that we're no longer doing full-time travel, we're kind of going back and forth from our home base. We've been talking about like what kinds of things should we pack, what kinds of things should we be packing, and it gives us some flexibility where we can leave a lot at home and we can be more minimalistic.
Yeah.
But now with airlines being so restrictive and we're looking constantly for good deals to fly out, like my backpack is getting a little bit too large. Like I love it and I think it fits everything that I need, but on this flight I had to take a lot of it out and it was pretty much like 2/3 empty.
Yeah, it was like a backpack and you had like
it was so floppy.
2 shirts in there and it was there.
So
and plus your laptop, which is quite heavy.
Which is also quite heavy. Yeah. So yeah, we're thinking about, what's the right size, and I think that's what prompted you to get the 28 liter backpack.
Yeah, for sure. Like I haven't gotten a second look at all from any of the airlines. Unlike when we tried to fly Spirit with your backpack.
I definitely got that.
Ugh. So the actual ticket on Spirit to where we were flying to was $59.
Yeah.
And then when they decided, just kind of randomly, it felt like that your bag was too big. That cost
probably was
$99.
It was so hard. It hurt my soul.
Spirit.
Yeah. Up until that point, I was feeling so confident about my packing skills and my ability to just like smile my way through and just like, hi, no, my backpack's normal. I'm just a tiny person. I'm just short. No.
But since it's a core part of their business model, you can just tell that like every X people in line, they just like pick you out and send you to another line where you got to pay $100.
So
there's no real rhyme or reason.
Now we're the kind of people that carry luggage scales with us too, just because these airlines have gotten way more restrictive. To answer your question briefly, what do you typically bring on a medium length trip? I think we have it pretty down pat, but our process is this. We think about how long we're going for, what the weather's going to be like, and what's the bare minimum that we need. 2 or 3 pairs of shirts, 2 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shoes. I usually bring my trail runners and then 1 pair of sandals, either my slippers or my Tevas. And then like little toiletries, as little as possible, like face lotion, toothbrush, makeup if you want it, earrings, and that's kind of, and then 3 to 4 pairs of underwear. It's pretty minimal, so that way, one, we know that when we're on the road, we can do laundry or we can go shopping, which we do a lot, and bring home things. And then that's it for like clothing. And then the tech is just a whole nother thing that I think most people won't be bringing, like their laptop, their big cameras, these podcast microphones.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we obviously have to bring a lot of gear just for filming, right? And that's probably over half of the stuff that we bring at this point is a big old camera here. I think that my rule for packing that I've come to over time is that if at any point I say, oh, I should bring that just in case, I just leave it at home. I just straight up leave it at home because I know that I'll be able to buy it. If it rains, I'll buy an umbrella when I get there. Everybody sells umbrellas everywhere. And if I feel like I ran out of toothpaste, I'll buy that once I get there, or any number of other things that rule applies to. And I think that over time, reducing that like anxiety of like, oh, but if I forget this, I'm definitely going to need it. And then it's going to cost $1 million when I get there.
Yeah.
Like over time, you start to realize that basically everywhere you travel to in the world will have all of the basic necessities, and almost everywhere you go to will have just literally more than what you had at home. So
I feel like this rule applies to everything except for cables in your life.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I always got to have the right charging cables.
Our entire glove compartment
this right here
in our camper van, we'll show you, is full of cables. It is wild. But anyway, if you think it would be helpful for us to kind of go through every single thing that we bring and how we approach it, we can definitely do a packing video in the future.
Yeah, because this is that would be kind of the result of like 10 plus years of travel, 4 around the world trips, and slowly just like whittling down to just the good stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it could be interesting.
Yeah.
Let us know if you think so too.
Yeah, and we can do it specifically also for where we are right now, which is our New Zealand camper van trip.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the next question.
What do we got next? That was a great question.
Yes,
I
thank
love
you
talking about this gear stuff, especially backpacks. I could talk about backpacks forever.
Because you have like 20 of them.
I do have a lot.
All right, so the next question comes from taketothehighway.com 3152, who says, just finished your fantastic video on Fukuoka. Thanks. And had to come back to TST for another question. How do you find all these great and notable restaurants? What's your go-to resource for finding the best places?
Oh, man. I can tell you what, it's not Google. It's
That's true.
It's not the internet.
Yeah.
It's not the internet. And I think over time, I've become more and more like disillusioned is maybe the right word with any website that gives reviews of things, because especially if you're from America, or if you're like looking into the way that Americans review things, you either review it as a 5 or a 1. There's nothing in between. We're so extreme with the way that we review things, especially on Google.
They made me wait 30 minutes. 1 star.
1 star. Or even just like, it's just so many unreasonable 1-star reviews. I could do a whole podcast on finding hilarious, unreasonable 1-star reviews. But like, it's true. Nobody really like in the star ratings, like a 3 out of 5 should be like good.
Yeah.
And a 4 out of 5 should be like great. And a 5 out of 5 should be like life-changing. But instead, pretty much every restaurant on Google reviews kind of like, if it's any good at all, if it's even like reasonably kind of good, it just normalizes out at like a 4.2 or a 4.3.
Yeah.
And every restaurant is that. And if it's like a 3.9, you're like, oh man, that must be a dumpster
One of
fire
the
in there.
best tips I've ever read was when you're looking at any reviews, whether it's Amazon,
Nice
Google.
one. You got that. You got that mosquito.
There's some mosquitoes and sandflies everywhere. Whether it's Amazon, Google reviews, Yelp, someone said, read the 3-star reviews. They're often the most thorough and the most helpful. The 5 stars and the 1 stars generally are like the worst. But 3 to 4 stars, that's where you should be reading and to get the most information. So yeah, I think we're a little bit more weary of Google reviews. And I would say our favorite finds are often not even on Google or online.
Yeah. That sounds very hipster to say that.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to come across that way. It's not like we're like, not like we like are a magical fountain of like knowledge of these places. Or I mean, there are some places like Tokyo that I've been to like 10 times, and I know the things that I love, and that's the stuff that we like put into the videos is like these cool things that I found walking forever and ever.
Yeah.
I just like we're not hipstery and that we're like totally without Google Maps or whatever. I think that we just genuinely think that we find better restaurants if we just walk around the neighborhood instead of just like looking up things and then having this expectation in our head of what this restaurant's going to be like, and then we go to it, and then the very best thing that could happen is that restaurant would just like meet our expectations.
Which we understand the conundrum when it comes to like YouTube, and we're reviewing and we are showcasing a lot of these restaurants and these places. But in general, we have a much better experience when we're traveling. I would say in general, we have a much better experience when we're traveling, when we just walk around and look for the right place. I mean, I think on our 5th date, we were going to walk around the city and in San Francisco and just, find a place to eat. And I think we ended up walking for 5 hours.
I made this poor girl walk basically all around San Francisco just to
for
find
the right place,
the perfect restaurant, because I love doing it. It's like my favorite pastime.
And it really, what it comes down to though is like a couple of things. Budget. We're always looking for kind of just like
a value,
a not fancy place.
Yeah.
But yeah, or if it's fancy, it's fine. But generally a casual, homey feeling place. We're looking for food that's tasty, that's filling, and for a good price, like something that we can actually afford.
Yeah, and I think that like we're very willing to pay for like really good food, but I think we immediately will be turned off of any restaurant that charges more because it has like fancy tablecloths or a nice view. Or anything like that stuff, I think to both of us is just totally valueless.
Yeah.
But like super delicious food, we're like,
I love a good
super
view,
in.
though.
If it's like, okay, but if we had to choose between like crappy view, great food, or great view, crappy food, or expensive food, I put those two things in the same. I would say we'd always choose the great food.
For us,
and crappy view.
Ambiance isn't, candlelit dinners or really clean. I know this sounds bad, but like really clean windows or something. Like for me, when I think of like my favorite experiences or some of our favorite experiences eating out have been like going to get breakfast on the side of the road in Taipei, or, at the food stalls in Hong Kong or Singapore. Like those kinds of places we just only discover just by walking around and knowing that this is just a feeling. We know it's going to be budget. We know it's going to be tasty. We see a lot of people here, and that's how we decide.
Yes,
absolutely.
I mean, I do think there are some websites in some countries that actually do accurate reviews. And I think it's worth talking, like Tabelog in Japan. I'm not sure how to say it. That website, for example, things are generally rated accurately. And coming from the U.S., it might seem harshly, where like if a restaurant has a 2.9 in the United States, you would think that restaurant is actively trying to kill you. But objectively, that's like a 60% good restaurant, which means that it's like pretty good.
Yeah.
Like a pretty good restaurant.
It was pleasant.
Right. And that's the way that
Mom says about me.
And that's the way that the reviews work on a website like Tabelog, or for example the restaurant reviews that were inside of Naver in South Korea. They were generally pretty fair. Whereas like a restaurant rated 4 would be great.
Yeah.
It would be like a genuine, and a restaurant rated 5, there were like 3 in the whole country.
Yeah, that's true.
We
generally, when we look at Google or Yelp and anything is below 4, you're like, hold the phone.
That is the response, because everything is rated a 5 or a 1, right?
Yeah,
so there's so little nuance in there.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. So I think that there are some websites, but generally I would say Google reviews, I think, are kind of useless for finding a truly great restaurant that'll fit you.
So I'd say in summary, our overall approach is, we just like to get to the place that we're traveling in and walk around and use our eyeballs and see like what gets our attention, what matches and what fits our needs. Like on our trip to Fukuoka specifically, I mean, we found like that ramen restaurant mostly because we saw the 290 yen sign, and we were intrigued.
Yeah.
So yeah, budget is a big part of it.
Who wouldn't be? 290 yen ramen?
I know.
Come on.
And vending machine.
Come
and
on.
also that bar that we went to, like that stand-up bar. It was literally just walking around, poking our heads into different bars and seeing, wow, this place is full of life and so exciting. So you kind of just have to like take a chance and trust that like what is out there will meet your needs.
Yeah. And basically, we just keep walking until Lisa gets hangry. I would
It's
say
true.
that's generally like whenever Lisa gets hangry,
Like it's time.
perfect restaurant.
And it really, really
That's the
bothers
one.
me though when I settle and when we find a place and I eat somewhere that I'm like, I'm just hangry, I just want to eat, and then the food is unsatisfying. There's no feeling like that, and that's a bummer. So just trust that, like, trust your instincts and trust your instincts and trust your gut. But also there are some, I will say, we use Reddit, and I think Reddit mostly
Yeah.
for some of like those like well-known, fun, interesting things like Kichi Kichi Omarice in Kyoto.
Yes. That was one of the ones that we
Team
booked way in
Labs.
advance and has
Yeah.
like 1 billion Google reviews. But that's kind of like, that was more like booking a show than a restaurant. You know, like you go there specifically for this like crazy experience of this guy like lighting his own kitchen on fire.
Yeah. We love recommendations, and we love when people tell us you should definitely visit this place and you should definitely visit this place for this and this. We love recommendations, but ultimately we know that like everybody has very different tastes, very different budgets, very different styles of traveling. So I think the way we approach it is when we get a recommendation or when we see something, we also have to kind of just tell, is this something that vibes with us?
Yes. And I think actually maybe the best resource for food recommendations is in the comments of our own videos.
Yes.
Because we release the video and then all of a sudden there's just these floods of
That's
hundreds,
true.
sometimes thousands of comments of people being like, oh, you should have gone there. Oh, you should have tried this bakery. You should have done that. And we obviously we don't get to try that because we've already released the video and we're home by the time that happens. But that's where I think you should probably look to try to find these like great restaurants that are kind of a little bit more off the beaten path, generally a little more budget.
Yes.
Yeah. Check out the comments of our videos. We've found some great things out of there that we absolutely
Agreed. So the next question we got was from Andrew Pagan, who asks another question on the topic of making your YouTube channel a business. At what point would you decide to throw in the towel? Would your runway have to run out, or would there have to be some other event? I love your videos and travels and hope you don't leave us. Oh, we hope
man.
not either.
Yeah. So every single week, we have a meeting where we talk about our finances. And we have this like gigantic spreadsheet where we go over, Lisa genuinely hates it. But this thing is just a big calculator that I've built that takes our like current, how much money we got saved up, how much we got in our bank accounts, etc. And then it spits out at the end of it, based on how much we're spending each month, how long of a runway we have before we run out of money.
Yep.
And this was really important, especially for the previous like 2.5 years of doing this YouTube channel, where our revenue was essentially zero.
Yeah.
It was basically none. And we weren't making any money from the YouTube channel, so we were just seeing our bank account just constantly go down and down and down to the right over and over time. And these check-ins every week that we have would be like, okay, we got X amount of months left. We got, now we only got X amount of months left because like the stock market didn't do well. And now
It's been nice to do it too. Like we try to do it once a week, but also when we know we're about to make big purchases, when we feel like we've been spending way more than we've been making, it's always just nice to go back into that spreadsheet. I can't believe I'm saying this because it gives me anxiety. It used to give me a lot of anxiety to plan, but
because the numbers were only going one way for a very long time.
But now it's nice to kind of know, okay, like I can take a little bit more here, or we can make this big purchase for now and hope that recuperates in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the financial part of it, is we always know how much runway that we have left. And this was all part of our plan of doing this. Like when we quit our jobs, we didn't know that we were going to be making a YouTube channel. We had no idea. But luckily we had saved up, like a year or two worth of spending. We don't spend all that much, so that wasn't all that much money. But it was enough for us to like bootstrap this little YouTube channel and give it a little bit of time to grow into the thing that it has now, which now, I mean, it's not like we're making a profit off of this thing at all. I'd say we're just barely covering our expenses throughout like life and then traveling here and making these YouTube videos. So we're like finally just evened out a little bit. And that is a nice feeling. It's
nice to have. It's like this plant that we picked up at the store the other day. We've named him Sunny.
Yep.
And,
for those of you on podcast, this is a tiny white plant that I got for $1 at a Bunnings in New Zealand, and it's very beautiful.
It adds a little bit of joy to our lives in our camper van. Like it it's not thriving currently in its current state because it's cold outside.
Are you comparing
and
Sunny to our YouTube channel?
I'm saying, like, you were talking about how it's nice, that we're kind of just like we're cruising,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have a full garden yet. Sonny's not growing tomatoes. That's not his lot in life, but he's adding some joy.
I am so lost
I
by
know,
this analogy.
I had it, but I think to summarize,
Are we a tiny budding store plant and we're going to eventually grow into a tomato?
anyway, I'm going to stop with the analogy.
Okay, I don't know where we were headed with that.
I think, though, to answer the question, what would make us throw in the towel? We want to keep going for as long as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I think runway has some to do with it, but we're lucky enough. Like right now, I think we have 2 years of runway.
Yeah, something like that.
To keep trying. Also, I don't know. What are some potential things that would make us stop?
So I can think of one big one. Like I think the most likely reason why we would ever stop, and whenever I think of this potential, I think of The Dark Knight. So let me go with a quick nerdy quote here.
Oh boy.
So the Batman movie, right, the middle one of the Nolan series, where he says, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And I think that all of us over time have seen some of our favorite creators maybe not do anything as dramatic as become a villain, but eventually the thing that they start making just evolves and changes so far from where they started initially that their initial fan base, like the people that really like love them, and this has certainly happened with us with creators that we love watching, eventually they just like move so far away from where they started that initial fan base, the people that like helped them get off the ground, just drop them fully because their content has just changed so far.
And yeah, that's a struggle. It's a hard thing to grapple with.
Like to have success change the type of thing that we would make would be such a sad outcome for this, for me personally, is to have like, instead of the success allowing us to do like more of this or to be able to make like better versions of this or whatever, to have that like fundamentally change the way that we think about making this stuff and feel like, I don't know, and to feel like we're just creating to like chase that success. I think that would be, for me at least, becoming the villain over time. That would be like my villain moment where I would feel like maybe it's time to throw in the towel, because it wouldn't be about making something creative and useful and helpful for other people out there that are trying to do like a similar thing that we are. It would be just about like chasing that algorithm or chasing success or fame or some other external silly thing that we don't actually care about. We do need some amount of it, right? We need some amount of, but if that became like priority number one and we lost our way to that at some point in time, and the only way we'd know that is with you guys calling us out.
I do think, I mean, to that end, I think one of the things that I was thinking about was, what could potentially make us throw in the towel. I mean, obviously there are a lot of things that could change in the next couple of years, but I can see a world someday where, we talked about burnout last week, how it's a thing that continues. It's a thing that a lot of people battle in all forms of work. It's the constant need to constantly be working without taking breaks. And I could see a world where eventually, someone's creative drive or desire to help or desire to make content or desire to help other people just dries out, burns out because of the constant doing. And I think that can also be a reason why people might stop or quit. Not that I want that to happen.
I want to quit well before I feel like our like creative well is dried up, or our helpfulness well is dried up. And I think that probably, I don't know, I've seen some creators where that's happened. And I understand the implication. I understand the point of like changing what you do. I totally get that. But like changing the reasons that we do this for, I think that can never change. I totally get like changing the venue or the type of videos we make or the things that we talk about because we're more interested over time in a different subject than we are right now or whatever. But to change the reason why you're doing it, or like the point of it, to change it from like internally wanting to help people to externally just wanting to chase fame or success or money, Like, I think that well before that point is when we will throw in the towel. I hope. I
Yeah.
hope that we will have the wisdom to not let it go too far if some crazy thing happens that we actually see any real success out of this.
Thanks so much for that insightful question. We love talking about this, you know, the ins and outs of how the channel works. If you're interested, definitely feel free to keep asking us more questions about this.
Yeah.
And any travel related questions.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of travel, I saw this really interesting, funny headline in the news today. In Japan, bullet train passengers treated to wrestling match on board in world's first.
So my first thought is that it's a sumo wrestling
It's
match.
not
Is that okay?
a
It's not a
sumo.
sumo. Okay.
So this past Monday, the world's first wrestling match, and I think this is just like pro wrestling maybe or semi-pro.
Amazing. What? On a train?
Wrestling match took place on a Japanese bullet train. So like immediately comes to mind like
Yes.
Brad Pitt's and that Brad Pitt bullet train movie.
Yeah.
But
Which was actually, I thought that was
it
really
was
good.
a really great movie. I don't know if
I
this
had a lot of-
inspired it,
I had a lot of fun with that movie.
but essentially a train carriage was like a wrestling. You can watch the video and I'll post this on our description below. But Japanese professional fighters battled in the aisle of a train carriage, and it was actually like an organized event where they sold out tickets like within half an hour of posting them.
I would have bought those tickets.
Yeah, so this train went from Nozomi. This bullet train went from Tokyo to Nagoya on a Shinkansen,
Mhm.
and spectators were basically treated to wrestlers fighting inside the train as they went up to 285 kilometers per hour. I don't know. Would you?
I would wrestle on a train. Like, not only would I buy those tickets, but
Of
I would
course you would.
absolutely like give that a try. That would be so much fun.
That's so funny.
What a crazy thing to do.
I'm so curious. Like, is this something that they're going to keep doing, and what inspired this? And I don't know. Like, to me, when I think of Japan trains, I think of quiet, very peaceful rides home. There are a lot of rules too, right? Like it's considered bad etiquette to talk loud on the trains. The fact that a whole carriage was just the setting for a fight is fascinating to me.
That's awesome. That's just awesome.
So our final question comes from Pamela5719, who asks, do you lock your passports in your room when you're out and about? And I think is a great question and a very specific safety question, but led us to talk about some really, I don't know, leads me to think about some really interesting questions about like safety while traveling.
And we ended up talking about this all last night after we read this question of like, what are our best practices? Like, what are the things that we just do automatically now that
Without
we've been
even
traveling so
thinking
long?
about it.
Yeah, now that we've been traveling so long, what are just those things that we do? And I think one of those things, let's start with the question is, we almost never bring our passports out with us.
Yeah.
If we have a hotel room or even a camper van, we just leave it in whatever the safest thing is that we have and leave it at home, and we do not walk around with it.
Unless we absolutely know we need our passports with us, like if we're going to an event where they're going to check passports, then we bring it with us. But other than that, we try not to carry it around with us because our thought is if we're carrying it around with us, our backpacks or our purses get stolen, that's it. Game over.
For sure.
We have to start over.
We separate all of our like valuable stuff into two separate locations automatically. So like any major city, we do basically the same thing. So when we go out into the city, I'll take normally like 2 credit cards, probably my driver's license, so I have some sort of ID with me from back in the US, and I just stick those things in my pocket, and then a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And then we have all of the rest of our other credit cards and all the rest of our cash tucked away in the hotel.
Yeah. We don't bring all of our stuff. Like basically, what's that phrase about eggs in a basket?
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
We don't put all of our credit cards in one basket and bring that basket out with us.
Right. Yeah. That way, I mean, we have 2 debit cards, so then only one of us will bring one debit card out, and then the other one will be back in the hotel room. So that way, no matter what happens, if we happen to get robbed in the hotel, we still have the stuff on us. If we get robbed while we're out in the street or whatever, then we still have the things back in the hotel to be able to get us out of a jam. And I think that rule kind of applies to just about everything. We bring the bare minimum required for whatever adventure we're going on, and we leave the rest in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Now, this is under the assumption that the hotel that you're staying at is trustworthy. And if it's not, you should probably just move to another hotel.
Yeah, you shouldn't be staying there maybe.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, we've been lucky enough. Like we haven't had any major issues regarding this as we've traveled over the last few years.
Mhm.
I think I remember though feeling that I remember worrying about this on my first trip though by myself because I hadn't really traveled a lot and I read online people talked about locking things away in a safe.
Right.
People talked about, making sure that when you're staying in a hostel, you're storing your money in the safest places, all the little crevices that no one will know about.
Mhm.
I did make sure, right, to keep money tucked away in safe places and I didn't keep all my money in the same place. Like in a backpack, I might keep some cash in one compartment and then the rest like in a different compartment on me. Um, but I didn't, as soon as I started traveling, I didn't really feel like I had to worry about locking my passport in a safe.
Right.
I felt safe enough in a lot of the hostels and a lot of the hotels that I stayed in that I could just stash it away in my backpack and put my backpack away in a locker or something.
Yeah, and I think that like most crimes are crimes of convenience. Like if you just like leave out a gold bar on your bed in the hotel room,
Sure.
you're kind of asking for it to disappear. But if you like put it away in your backpack and then put that backpack like under your bed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it'll probably still be there when you get back.
Yeah.
Like just I think just generally not making those valuable things super obvious and just like leaving them out in the world is a pretty good way
Mm-hmm.
to secure things. I also think about digital security all the time, obviously, as a very important aspect of this. For
Yes.
example, definitely recommend using a VPN whenever you're on a public Wi-Fi
Mm.
at all. So if you go on the Wi-Fi thing and you click on it and it doesn't require a password to log into it, it means that you're on an unsecured Wi-Fi, which means that basically anyone else could be sniffing that Wi-Fi traffic while you're there and intercept your credentials in transit from like your computer to the Wi-Fi access point out to the internet. There are some obviously asterisks to that, like if they're using HTTPS or if they have like nice certificates installed or any amount of encryption. But generally on those unsecured Wi-Fi access points, I will use a VPN immediately for anywhere that we go. And also backing up things as you're traveling. We do this all the time. We back up our photos every single night. We back up, and by backup I would just mean like send them up to Google Photos in the cloud or send them back to our little like storage thing that we have at our place. And also making multiple copies of all of our video files that we carry with us all the time because those are important to us. And making sure that we have a password on our laptops and on our phones to secure those. It's just using 1Password, a password manager, to make sure that all of our passwords are like secure and that we can change them easily. There's a lot of things that I think about when it comes to digital security, but I think you're much more likely to have something weird happen or to have someone steal your credit card info because you put them into some like unsecured website than you are to have someone like steal a credit card out of your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think thinking more about digital security is actually like a more important thing to do than it is to just like secure the things on your person.
Or both. Maybe both are
Sure.
important.
Yeah, both are important, no question. But if I had to choose only one, I've had my credit card info stolen like 8 times in my life, and I've had people I've had people like mug me and steal stuff out of my pockets like 2 times in my life.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
So it just happens way more frequently, and it can happen from anywhere.
Let's like walk through what we do when we get to a new place, what we make sure that we pack related to safety. So I would say in general, whenever we're heading out for a trip, we want to make sure that we have our passports, of course, but also copies of our passports.
Photocopies of them, like
Yeah.
not additional passports,
No.
but like just pictures of them.
Yeah. So, and we will both carry copies of our passports on each other's like packs. So Josh has copies of his and mine, and I also have a copy of mine and his in my pack, just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
That way, if we lose one pack, then the other person has all the information that we need.
We generally we don't bring all of our credit cards. We don't bring all of our cash when we're heading out for a trip. We usually, when we get to the airport, we'll take out cash from an ATM, and then we'll split up that cash between us so that one person isn't carrying all of it.
Yep, exactly. And I think that there are also some things to make yourself just look like less of a target.
Mm.
And I think those are just like not flashing expensive electronics when you're out in public is a pretty basic thing.
Putting your cash away like at the ATM pretty immediately,
Yep.
not just like walking around, you know, and
Yeah.
fumbling around with it.
Only pulling out just as much cash as you actually need to do whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Like just pull out enough for a couple of days instead of like your entire trip.
Which we know a lot of people, you know, debate about, because before this, I had to take out, you know, loads of cash. I was like, I don't want to carry this much cash with me, but I didn't want to get hit with all these fees.
Right.
But now with Charles Schwab's ATM fees being refunded, we have the luxury of just taking out as much as we need at a time.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
We're not sponsored by Charles Schwab.
No, not at all. Not at all. They're just like the best current solution.
It's just a pretty cool feature of their ATM and their debit checking account.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like also just kind of generally knowing where you're going seems to help a lot. Like not looking lost and knowing where you're headed. Like either like screenshotting those Google Maps directions in case you don't have internet or
something that I like to do before our trips is when we're on Wi-Fi is just take a download. Google Maps actually allows you to download maps offline. So that way when you get to a place and let's say you don't have data or don't have service, you can access your maps and get to your location pretty easily.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, even though we talked about reviews earlier and we said they're generally unhelpful, reading the reviews of hotels and accommodations in advance has really, really helped the way that I think about booking stays and safety specifically.
Yeah.
Like reading people's experiences. What was it like to walk back to the hotel at night? What was the staff like? You know, what were the rooms like? Generally, those kinds of details helps me get a sense of, am I going to feel safe here? Is my stuff going to be safe here? And so although you have to take every review with a grain of salt for sure, reading the details and reading between the lines and seeing what kind of features of that hotel or that hostel has helps me feel more secure about safety.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand that safety is a bigger deal in some places than it is in others, you know, and that you need to take additional precautions. But these couple of rules, like splitting up all of our important things, leaving our really valuable stuff back in the hotels, and then making sure that we have like multiple copies of important documents spread across our 2 backpacks. I think between all of that and then just kind of like the more intangible things of like looking where we know where we're going, smiling at people, being friendly, not kind of inviting in those like weird experiences, just like saying no to scammers on the street that come up to you, like,
or just ignoring people.
Like
you know, trust your gut.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest rule that I have when we're traveling is that if someone approaches me in the street, I should be a little wary. I should maybe, but if I go and like ask any general person in the world, if I pick out someone 99+% of the time, like a rounding error, 100%, those people are going to be like awesome, helpful, and just kind of like going throughout their day. But if I'm traveling out in the world and I look like a tourist and someone comes up to me, maybe I need to be a little bit skeptical of the thing that they're offering.
And even those situations, most of the time, those people are asking some other things or are also just curious about where we're from and want to strike up a conversation.
Or just trying to sell you a weird bracelet.
Also true.
Something like that, you know, something you don't necessarily want. And then you just like say, no thanks, and then you just move on with your life.
I think safety too, specifically as a woman and sometimes solo traveling, it's always helpful. Like whenever I go out or we're not together, I think we always try to make sure that we have a set time that we're going to meet, a meeting location, and we have ways to contact each other. I try not to take too many shortcuts or back alleyways. I try to like look for places that are well traveled, populated areas and in well lit areas, but I try not to go out too late at night unless I really need to. Even then, I don't really need to sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, like your considerations of safety would be very different than mine on any given trip, and I like understand that.
Yeah, both are important, but I think those are specific things that I like to think about. That being said, we've had very, very good luck and not too many problems with safety on the road. we've been pretty fortunate, and like I said, I think everywhere generally, and this is generally I think the theme of traveling is what we've experienced. Most people are wonderful, wonderful, kind human beings that are just happy to see you. And
Yep.
if they're not happy to see you, they're just going about their business.
Okay, I think that's a great place to end this one. So please just leave any more questions or comments that you have down in the comments section below. We'll answer your questions next week. That's it for Travel Support Thursday.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week from another beautiful, fun location in New Zealand,
Yeah,
which also happens to be a very safe and welcoming country.
Yes.
See you later.
All right, see you next week.